encouraging me to bring out all the extra chairs and everything. So thank you again for your time, for coming out on this evening. So I will kind of start by explaining a little bit about Shilo and breaking down accessory dwelling units, which is a huge opportunity in especially California. So again, we are Shilo, and I'm just going to cover today's agenda. So if you guys do have questions, please know that we'll be covering them, potentially covering them in different parts of our presentation. So we're going to start off with the basics, the benefits of building an ADU. We also talk about California's new legislation, a lot of it starting January 1st on 2020, which has some very encouraging news for building these units. They've really made it a lot easier. Also talk a little bit about the different construction methods that you could use, prefab versus traditional. Also, we will be having a full-on case study about the financial returns an accessory dwelling unit can provide, as well as explaining the different financing options you can have to build your ADU. So we're really excited to kind of bring on that case study near the end of the presentation. And lastly, a shameless plug about Shilo and what we're able to provide in our services. So, introducing Shilo, we are a prefab design build firm that handles the entire accessory dwelling unit process from permitting, design, eligibility, all the way to installation and bringing on that potential tenant. So, we really do handle everything. We want you to just sit back, relax, and kind of let us take care of it from there. We're based in the Bay Area and greater Los Angeles, and we work with a panelized system. I'll go into detail with exactly how that works and what that entails. But again, we're very passionate about providing enjoyable living spaces for our clients. This is our team. Myself, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer. Ryan is our CEO, and Tomi is our CFO. And I'll be speaking about Ahmad and David and their phenomenal experience in the past with building some really great structures. So what is an ADU? ADUs are secondary housing units that you can place on an existing single-family home. Pretty straightforward, and there's also several different types of accessory dwelling units. This is one of our designs, actually, a nice little rendering. This is a detached accessory dwelling unit. What that means is that it's new ground-up construction, generally placed in the backyard of homes. The second type is attached ADUs. This is basically adding more square footage and sharing a wall with the primary residence. We've seen these increase in demand quite a lot. We also have detached conversions. Let's say you had a separate structure of a garage of sorts, or a shed, or just additional space. They can be converted, maybe square footage added on top as well, and turned into a living space. And lastly, the interior conversion. This is, let's say you take a master bedroom or a living room and turn it into its own newfound structure. Now, each accessory dwelling unit will need its own kitchen and bathroom. So that's mandatory for them to be considered an ADU. But the kitchen doesn't need to be large. It can be a kitchenette, and as goes with the bathroom. So the reason why you should build an accessory dwelling unit, I think there's plenty of reasons, and they're incredibly versatile. I think the one aspect that might interest a lot of you is generating rental income. As we've all seen, rent prices continue to rise in the Bay Area and Los Angeles, and it doesn't seem like they're really going anywhere anytime soon. And it's just hard to find housing. As someone who's tried, it's really hard to find housing. So the demand is high, the supply is low, so rental income is a huge reason why people are building. ADUs also will add property value to the unit. So for example, it'll increase the overall valuation, so when you're selling, not only you're selling your primary home, but you're selling that accessory dwelling unit as well. And we'll kind of touch on appraisals and how that property value increases a little bit later, but it definitely adds value as you're adding square footage. And we've seen that interior conversions may add a little bit less property value compared to a detached or an attached unit as you're adding more square footage in that setting. Next up, house loved ones. If you're looking to be close to family but not too close to family, it's nice having them live in your backyard. It'd be great for my parents to one day have my parents live in my backyard, or I know if coming out of college it would have been really nice to have that proximity and privacy. So housing loved ones is an option. Age in place is something that we've seen really increase over time, and it's someone living in the accessory dwelling unit and then renting out the main home. Let's say you had a 4 or 5 bedroom house, the kids are all gone, and now you're realizing you don't really need all that space. You can just add an accessory dwelling unit into your backyard, have this really nice new ground up construction place to live in. And now you can rent out the main home. And so that actually really helps people's retirement plans, because if you're renting out like a 5-bedroom home in San Jose, that's going to be quite pricey. So we've seen this really rise in popularity. Home offices are something that people really enjoy having. We've seen more and more people having the opportunity to work at home, so office space is great. And just a general place for rest and relaxation. If you want to host some friends over, have a nice little place that's in the backyard, maybe connected to a deck or next to a pool. It's just a really cool spot to have. So accessory dwelling units are really, really versatile. They're also great for California. This comes directly from the Department of Housing, Community, and Development. ADUs are an innovative, affordable, and effective option for adding much needed housing in California. It provides the opportunity to double the housing stock in single family zones. And it's something that's just really, really needed. Governor Gavin Newsom is very high on accessory dwelling units, and that's why he's made them a lot easier, as you can see here. Now is absolutely the time to build. So these aren't all the laws that are going to be enacted January 1st of 2020, but these are some of the key highlights. The minimum size is now 200 square feet for all jurisdictions. Also, the maximum must be at least 850 square feet. So if you're a city, you can no longer say, the maximum's only 700 to 600. This somewhat depends on your lot size and the floor area ratio, meaning how much habitable space exists within your lot. So it's slightly dependent, but we're seeing that they're very bullish on ADUs. Also, cities can no longer require replacement parking. Let's say you take a detached garage and convert it, you're not allowed to have to include new parking spaces. And also, if you're half a mile from transit, parking is not required to be given to your tenants. And next up, ADUs must be, at least the permits, must be processed from 120 days maximum to 60 days maximum. So they're really, putting the hammer down on a lot of cities. We went to school at UC Santa Barbara. They were kind of notorious for leaving those permits in the queue, but that can no longer exist. 2 months is really the cutoff date, and that's cut in half from what it was before January 20. I agree, it's perfect. Also, impact fees. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware of what impact fees are, but we've seen that a lot of jurisdictions will have like a park fee or a school fee or a transportation fee if you're near some of those public spaces. And those fees really add up on top of some of the permitting fees that you have to pay for. And oftentimes cities would kind of use those to prevent people from building ADUs. That's no longer the case if your ADU is below 750 square feet. And so that's big. You're now seeing a pretty steep reduction in permit fee costs if your ADU is below that square footage amount. Oh, and another really, really great opportunity is the fact that ADUs are now exempt from owner occupancy requirements until 2025. That's huge. That means you don't have to be living in the single family property. If you have a group of single family properties, you can start putting ADUs in them and don't really have to worry about the owner occupancy. And so this lasts until 2025. They're going to reassess how it's improved the general housing economics in California, but at least until 2025, and we expect and are almost 99.5% confident that'll continue forward, as we're already seeing ADUs improve the housing stock of a lot of neighborhoods.
Can you comment about JDUs, junior ADUs?
Yeah. So junior ADUs are a form of an interior conversion. So now you could add a detached accessory dwelling unit and a junior ADU inside of the existing property, but the junior ADU will have shared spaces, right? So you're not necessarily having that tenant only live in that small space, or not small, but that space. They're going to have to be allowed to use the shared, whether it be a kitchen or a different part of the home, the backyard, etc.
So they can share A wall maybe, a common wall?
Yeah, they
But
definitely.
they can share the kitchen and bathroom? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not entirely sure. Ryan, do you have an answer in regards to JADUs?
Yeah, you're not going to be able to share all the utilities. It's still supposed to be a habitable space, but you can't divide it into. You can have a detached ADU and a JADU, but you can't make your
the
single
same
family
dwelling.
property a triplex now.
In the same dwelling.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can have that JADU with the detached, but like he said, it can't necessarily become like a triplex.
Did you say that these laws are going into place January 1st?
January 1st, 2020. So the cities might take a little bit of time to adapt to them, but I know San Jose is already working on it. We were on the phone with them a couple times this week, and San Jose is very, very bullish on accessory dwelling units. I think verbatim on the phone, they said they want to make it as easy as possible. So it really is a phenomenal time. I will answer a little bit more questions during an intermission point. So I'll also start going into the building styles. So there's traditional and prefab, and I'll kind of explain what each of them are. So with traditional construction, it's kind of what you generally see. You'll have someone come to your backyard or the property, start with the site work, then put in the foundation, then putting the frames and the insulation, exterior siding, et cetera, et cetera. With prefab, however, you'll be doing the site work, and at the same time, your unit is going to be built in an off-site facility, somewhere entirely different. That unit is then shipped to the person's backyard and then placed inside of their property. So the one thing that you get out of prefab is the fact that you're able to build 30 to 50% faster than traditional construction. And Shilo uses a prefabricated model to build our units. So compared to traditional construction, we are about 30 to 50% faster. And so this helps with having a tenant come in a little bit earlier, generating a little bit more rental income. I'll answer your question a little bit.
Cost-wise, how is it different from the traditional model?
That depends. That very much so depends. We haven't seen, especially with the labor shortages that are existing in California, in like San Jose, Los Angeles, the fact that prefab requires less on-site assembly could save some money compared to traditional, but it's hard to exactly give that point. It really is case by case.
How about insulation on that prefab?
How about the installation? So within prefab, there's kind of two ways of doing it, and I'll be touching on that very soon. And with traditional, you might be able to be a little bit more, let's say, flexible in regards to the change orders, and at the same time, however, it is going to be a little bit more labor intensive. With prefab, you're getting that kind of factory line precision compared to traditional. However, quality-wise, they're identical, if not, better in the prefab situation. And I'd like to kind of touch on a myth, or maybe just a misunderstanding. So people often think of prefab or modular and assume like, oh, those mobile homes, the ones that are on wheels. I promise you that's not the case. Modular and manufactured homes are very different. Manufactured is like that mobile home, and it maybe depreciate over time, kind of like a car. But this is something that can be built through prefab and this as well. So you can create some really beautiful and high quality structures with modular and prefabricated technology. Okay, I'm gonna dive into the steps of building an accessory dwelling unit. First off, eligibility. What can I build? Can I build it? Which part of the backyard will it fit? This also includes a site survey, which I'll touch on shortly. A design phase. The design phase, allows you to build exactly the unit that you're looking for, into permitting, site work, build, install, and the certificate of occupancy. So to start off with eligibility, your offsite eligibility, kind of what you can do online, basically the homework part of building an ADU. There are some really phenomenal online resources to help you get started. First is Symbiom. So the website is called build.symbiom.com. We use it all the time. You can type your address in there and they'll tell you the size of the square foot that you could build, some of the other regulations that the city may have. Now Symbiom doesn't have the entire state of California covered. I know they have San Jose covered, but it's a really good place to start. Their software continues to improve and expand their locations, but we start there all the time when a client gives us an address. Next up is Houseable. Does something pretty similar. They require more verification to ensure that it's your unit. So you can't let's say there's a unit that you're looking to buy. It's going to be a little bit tougher to find out if it's eligible, but Houseable is another great resource. And then just contact your local building department. I know San Jose has a universal ADU checklist. So if you Google San Jose ADU universal checklist, it'll come up, and it has a really in-depth breakdown. San Mateo also has something really, really useful, and we'll actually be using their website during our case study. And Google Maps, always nice. And so this is the type of stuff that you could check: the maximum size, bedroom, bath numbers, setbacks, height, floor area ratio, and impact fees. Setbacks is how far from the exterior property line your unit needs to be. And heights, I know they do allow 2 stories in some jurisdictions for your ADU. So you could build quite vertically and maximize the rental income through that route. So this is the on-site eligibility, a site survey. This is something we highly, highly recommend all homeowners do before they start building. You really don't want to be in the middle of your building process and find out, we have to trench more than we initially thought, or maybe we need to upgrade the utility panel or the electrical panel. Finding that out halfway is going to lead to delays, cost increases. It's just a real hassle. So in a site survey, you'll be understanding some of the code requirements, the permitting, the MEP systems, including sewage, plumbing, electrical, mechanical. Some on-site observations, will I need to remove a tree in my backyard prior to building? Is that going to change the size of the ADU that I can put in? What's going to be the best financial investment in my single-family property? Critical issues such as slope, how is that going to change the type of foundation I put in? All of this should be covered in your site survey. Shilo does offer site surveys, so if you're interested in something like this, we can definitely provide that service to you. But again, I really can't stress it enough. We highly recommend you do this. It's generally not the best idea to just break ground without having this information ready to go. So when you're thinking about your design, the first question we always ask, what are you using it for? What's the purpose of the ADU? If it's rental income, then maybe adding a second bathroom is a good idea, or not bathroom, second bedroom is a good idea. The rent price will increase in that regard. If it's something that's more of a home office or an entertainment space, you might want more of an open floor plan, and maybe the bedrooms aren't as valuable. So definitely understand what your primary motivations are prior to building. Also, what are the lines of sight from your neighbors? If you're building ADU and it's a 2-story house right next to you, maybe having high windows in the bedroom isn't the best idea. So there's certain kind of ways to avoid having lines of sight from your neighbors peeking into your ADU. That's something Shilo can take a look at as well, and our designs kind of keep that in mind. But if you're working with a different architect, this is something that you should definitely consider. Third, and this comes on a lot of the regulation reports from different cities, is does this need to match the primary residence? Now that sentence in itself, it's kind of vague. What does match mean? Does it have to have the exact same materials? Well, we've seen that they kind of look for similar color schemes and a similar overall aesthetic, but it doesn't have to be the exact same thing produced twice. So it varies per city. We definitely recommend contacting your local building department or having us do that. And the nice thing about Shilo's system is that we use exterior hardy panels that can take a different form. So it could look like stucco, it could change different colors if you want it to match your primary home, and that's something we pride ourselves on. So allowing the homeowner to match their primary residence. So this is some of the information in San Mateo, and I'll also kind of verbally explain San Jose's. The city has a maximum of 640 square feet, and the county has a max of 720. Both are very positive on ADUs, as is with San Jose. And with San Jose, depending on your lot size, it'll have certain square footage requirements. And so that could also be found on the ADU checklist. With San Jose and San Mateo, all cities of California, they're gonna potentially change with the new laws in January 1st, 2020. So again, this kind of all lasts until the end of the year, but a majority of these municipalities are gonna have to adapt their laws to fit the state standard. The state standard is the king. It's the one that's on top. Cities might have slight adjustments, but fundamentally, they're the exact same. They have to abide by the state standards. Permitting, like I said earlier, it's going to be a maximum of 60 days before you have to receive your maybe changes, or if your permit's good to go, it'll be accepted. Again, starting 2020. And I really recommend working with an architect that understands ADU codes. We have heard of stories where they bring in an architect, he puts a design together, but it turns out that design does not match the permitting codes that occur in California, or maybe their exact jurisdiction. So you want to work with an architect that has maybe built ADUs in the past, knows how to build them, has built their own, or a design build firm that specializes specifically in accessory dwelling units. And again, Bay Area cities are truly trying to make this an easier process, and that's something that we're very happy about. Your site work. Your site work is going to include utility connection, electrical, optional for gas. We personally recommend going all electric with your ADU because taking the gas line and connecting it to the backyard home, it's pretty tough. It's not the easiest process to take on. So going all electric is actually a very strong idea. You're also going to have your sewage connection and your trenching, and you might need grading depending on the slope. And so grading means that if you're using a concrete slab as your foundation, one might be more elevated than the other. However, if you're working with some different topographies, Shilo likes to use helical piers. Just imagine a screw digging into the ground and a bunch of these kind of serving as your foundation. Seismically, they've been claimed to have a stronger kind of overall lifespan. Concrete slabs could crack, and they also work better with slightly different topographies and soil conditions. However, if you do want a concrete slab, Shilo can do that as well. We just prefer to use helical piers. And yes, that kind of covers that. And we went over some of the differences between the traditional and prefab space, but I want to kind of go in depth on of the two different overhead power lines though. This is actually pretty common in San Jose. If you have overhead power lines and you're trying to crane something into your backyard, it's not going to be fun. PG&E is going to make you pay for it, make you pay pretty, $20 to $30, maybe $40,000, because you're also going to have to cut off the electricity for that entire, street for a period of time. And so your neighbors aren't going to be very happy with you either. So if you do have overhead power lines, going fully modular might not be the move. Fortunately, Shilo does not go fully modular, we go panelized. So most of our components are finished off-site, such as having wall panels, the windows, doors, etc. And then it's shipped to the property and assembled on-site. So we ship it as a flat pack. And then if you have a side entrance, even if it's something like 5 or 6 feet, we bring in the panels through that side entrance and then assemble it from there. So that's not our picture of us, but this is just something I found online that kind of gives an example of what it looks like. Our wall panels would most likely be more finished on both sides so that there's less on-site assembly, but you can see someone can just physically bring them up. So if you're looking for a prefab solution that is faster, but you want to avoid a crane, and especially if you have overhead power lines, then a panelized system might be something that is more effective for your backyard home. Here are some best practices, and then I'll open up some questions afterwards before we get into the numbers and the case study. Site survey. I said this before, I will say it again. Please complete a site survey. It'll save you time later on and just a lot of stress. And it's a little bit of money that you put down up front, but it's a lot of money and that you could save on the back end. Talk to your neighbors, maybe bring them some cookies, let them know construction's about to go down in your backyard. For the most part, it shouldn't be too intense. And going with prefab, there's not going to be as much construction in your backyard. As we said, that a lot of the unit's going to be pre-finished in a different location. Work with maybe a specialized builder for ADUs or an architect that has built in the past and has it in their portfolio. I really stress this again, you don't want to have to double or triple pay for architectural drawings. That just causes a lot of time delay and frustration. Get pre-approved for financing. We'll talk about the different financing options quite soon. But getting pre-approved for financing is a real good idea. It's just going to make the process quicker for the builder as well as yourself, and it gives you an understanding of, how am I going to actually pay for this type of product. So please get pre-approved for financing, or at least do the research prior to going with a builder.
Can you get traditional financing on these, or is there some other type of financing?
Yeah, so there is traditional financing, and we'll be covering that very soon, just HELOCs or cash out refinances, but we have a little chart that explains, depending on your financial situation, what the best route is to go with financing wise. And change orders, change orders are a natural part of building an ADU, or not a natural part, but a part that just occurs within construction. But we try to, encourage people to stick with their designs when they initially go with the unit. So I'm willing to answer some questions. Again, we're about to go into project costs, property taxes, and a financial breakdown of what an ADU can provide you in a case study. So does anybody have any questions before I hand this off to Ryan? Yeah.
For those that are building ADUs in the Bay Area, do you have like a rough percentage breakdown for those building for rental income from like corporate housing, Airbnb versus long-term tenants?
That's a good question.
Percentage breakdown, that's a little bit tough because that's
Yeah.
not something that's necessarily reported, but from what we've seen, and that's actually something, if you're looking at short-term housing, that's one of the laws that's changing in 2020 where they're potentially removing short-term rentals.
They're trying to do it. The way that they're going to enforce it, I'm not entirely sure, but it could be occurring. Yeah.
Is that 300 to 400 square feet for construction?
I promise I'll get all into that right now.
Oh, I thought you were over and you were taking questions.
Okay, but that's an all-in price.
Yes, sir.
I've gone to a couple cities, and usually the group that's hard to deal with is the water companies. Do you know if any of the
Can't
laws
hear.
are changing? I know, for instance,
It's talking about water companies, yeah.
like in Contra Costa County,
Yes.
if you do a detached one, they want a separate water meter and charge. If it's 2 bedrooms, I think $35,000 just for the water meter. Do you know
So,
if any of the laws are changing, or from some areas?
yes,
water
yes.
meters are
So basically from the top down, all these laws are trying to make it easier. So from the water providers, I'm not entirely sure what exactly they're implementing, but I know they're trying to make it less prohibitive so that utility companies can't enact these very expensive restrictions that make it very difficult to build an ADU.
Yeah,
So I can follow up
if
with
there
you
was
in a
something
second.
specific, because I know I went to the city of Concord and asked about the water, and they're like,
Mhm.
sorry, we got no control over that.
In your case, it might be better to wait till 2020 then.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question on the same issue, water,
Mhm.
San Jose. So while site survey, do you check for the fire hydrants
Yes.
nearby, because San Jose says that's a requirement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
it's
if you're unlucky, if it's more than like 400 feet, then they said you have to install it.
yeah. That's one of those
It came
tough.
surprise to me.
Yeah, that's one of those tough things where cities have a little bit of leeway in what they can enact there. Are you?
Is it going away or in January 1st, or is it still there?
I can't answer that specifically for San Jose. That might be a safety prohibition. So that's something I can follow up with you in a second.
But in the site survey, we would absolutely cover something like that, and maybe even contact the city prior to something like that to get an understanding of where that might be an issue.
I have a question
Sure.
on the structural, how you place the units. Because I have a piece of property that's on a railroad track. It's kind of right there in the railroad track. So when I'm going over there, I'm seeing that bits of the baseboard is coming up and splitting. And so how would, if you were to have one there, would you use a certain?
Yes, I mean we work heavily with the structural engineer to make sure that our unit is going to be more structurally sound, hopefully, than your existing home, because it's a new home construction. That's a site-specific thing as well, but I'd love to talk to you about that afterwards, man.
Helical piers might be a better solution in that situation,
Mhm.
but I can't say that for sure until we kind of look at it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, where's your factory at?
So Shilo in itself doesn't have its own factory. We partner with a structural insulated panel manufacturer who we send our design and they ship their panels and we install with our finishes on site on your property.
That's on the prefab?
Yes, so we are a version of prefab called panelized construction, and we're working in Bakersfield, or our partner manufacturers in Bakersfield.
I mean, they do the modular there also?
Yes, yes.
I think, yeah, you have the option to do that. We specifically work with panelized, but I'm sure they can fully finish it there and then send it.
So without further ado, I'll go into some of the exciting stuff about the numbers and financial returns. So Shilo likes to quote a full all-in cost. So that goes from initial site survey to design phase, permitting and review, site work and build. And what we're seeing is typically a cost of $300 to figure an entire reassessment of your property. What it is a blended assessment. So your existing home appraisal stays the same, subject to Prop 13. And what's going to happen is the assessors are going to take a new assessment just of the accessory dwelling unit and add that on. And that combines to continue to be reassessed at a 1% of assessed value, capped at 2% growth, as is appropriate with Prop 13. So these are some of the ways that you can finance an accessory dwelling unit. We've highlighted home equity line of credit and cash out refi because those are the two most easily accessible and most traditional, like you were saying, sir, forms of financing. So a HELOC is a home equity line of credit. You can imagine that as you're essentially taking a loan based on out of the equity that you've built into your home already. And then a cash out refi is exactly what it sounds like, where you are cashing out the equity that you've already built into your home and refinancing on a loan on the ADU and your existing property itself. Having cash and just paying full cash is an option. It's not something that we typically recommend, but it is out there if you have a lot of cash. A renovation loan is essentially a construction loan, typically higher interest rate than a HELOC or a cash out refi. And then we're also seeing a more creative version of financing called an appreciation investment. So there's companies like Unison and Point that we haven't worked with specifically, where they will buy into your home like a share of a stock and share in the future appreciation or loss of your home. So we've written out this chart for you. So if you have high income and built equity in your home, we typically recommend either cash savings, a cash out refi, or a HELOC. If you're on the right end where you have a little bit lower income but high home equity, cash out refi or HELOC. And if you are on the lower income and low home equity, typically some of the financing options you're going to look at are a hard money loan or an appreciation investment. So with that, I'm going to go into a case study of San Mateo. Did you have a question, sir? Okay, no problem. So I'm going to go into a financial model that our team has built out based on a 1-bedroom, 600 square foot accessory dwelling unit in San Mateo. So I'll line out some of the assumptions. So we have a full build cost of $237,500 that includes the feasibility study, design and permit, and manufacturing and site work. So we're looking at a rent for a 1-bedroom in San Mateo of $2,000, which is, we think, relatively fair. And our built-in assumptions are a 20% expense ratio, including general administrative expenses, maintenance, trash, property management, as well as taxes and insurance. And as well, we also factored in a 5% vacancy rate to account for, whether you want to use the ADU for personal usage throughout the year. So in the first year, we're considering in our build-up period where there's 1 year of construction, but typically with Shilo and other prefab builders, you can usually get a tenant in much quicker. So that's a loss of about $7,000, just including the debt service. But starting year 1, you accumulate a revenue of about $23,000. And after you've accounted for your 20% operating expense and your interest and debt service, you're looking at a cash flow of $8,000 a year. Now, as you account for rent increases to year 30, that ends up being about $32,000 in net take home that you're taking at the end of the year. So our numbers are based on relatively conservative estimates. San Mateo County actually has their own calculator that I'm going to show you right now that shows that our numbers are relatively conservative. But to summarize our returns, we're looking at a total profit in terms of rental revenue over the course of 30 years of about $450,000, and home appreciation, just assuming cost increasing by about 2%, 3% every year, is another $450,000. So at the end of 30 years, if you were to sell your home, that ends up being about $900,000 of take-home profit. And these are some of the technical numbers if you'd like to get into it. A cap rate of 7.6 and a cash on cash of 11.4. So scrolling through, we've plugged in the same numbers into San Mateo County's building calculator. So this you can access yourself at secondunitcentersmc.org/calculator. So I'm just going to input some of these values. So San Mateo City, new construction, 1 bedroom, 600 square feet. Taking out a loan of a 30-year length and interest rate of 4.37 with an initial down payment of $50,000. And we set the market rates just based on what they have as default. So their numbers are very similar to ours already, where you have about $700 a month of monthly income after you've accounted for your debt service and your operating expenses, and a construction cost as well of $385 per square foot, which is right in the amount that I quoted earlier. But what I think is really interesting here is the property appreciation. At year 30, we quoted a property value increase of $450,000, where San Mateo County in themselves is saying that you're going to see an appreciation of $870,000 by year 30. So again, I want to make the disclaimer that Vinny did, where I'm not a financial advisor, and I encourage you to consult one before making a decision. But these are just based on numbers that the city and counties are providing ourselves. So this is about the conclusion of the financing portion. I'd just like to share a little bit about Shilo and what makes us special. So Shilo is a prefab design build firm, like Salak mentioned earlier, that based ourselves in the Bay Area and greater Los Angeles. What we do is we are a one-stop shop service. So from permitting and site survey to final certificate of occupancy, we take care of the entire process. We really believe in the benefits of accessory dwelling units to both individual homeowners and the community. And that's why we're really passionate and started this business a few years ago. Our units are high quality, personalized, and energy efficient. In fact, we go all electric with our ADUs, as will be required with new home construction in 2020, where you're going to have to require solar panels. It just makes a lot of sense for both the environment and on a long-term cost scale. I'd like to highlight some of our members. So our team brings about 100 years of collective real estate development experience, ranging from commercial, multifamily, restaurants, all the way down to single-family homes and ADUs. This is our Chief Design Officer, Ahmad Moazab, the man, the myth, the legend. He is also the principal of Tecta Associates, which is an architecture and interior design firm based in both LA and the Bay Area in San Francisco. One exciting thing is he was on the ADU path a long time before we even found about it. His ADU in 2015 won the best accessory building in Piedmont, and I'll show you some pictures later on. Our Chief Production Officer is David Weiss. He has about 40 to 50 years of experience as well, ranging from building factories in the Philippines to multifamily. He even cut into a portion of San Francisco or Oakland to build his own home. He was also the past president of Develop Smart Incorporated, and these two really are the backbone of what makes our design build firm so strong. And yeah, so Shilo, like I said, we want to take care of the entire process for you. And we really do believe in accessory dwelling units and all the benefits that they can bring. So thank you all so much for coming, and I'll open the floor up to some questions. Yes, ma'am.
Have you considered building 2 ADUs on the same lot, because it's a pretty big lot?
Yeah, so Shilo primarily focused in detached accessory dwelling units. So this is one law that we did forget to share. So if you own a single family home, you'll be able to build a detached ADU essentially in the backyard, as well as its JADU, which Salak laid out earlier. But if you have a multifamily property, which you see a lot of in San Francisco, you'll be able to build 2 detached ADUs or 2 ADUs and a JADU. So ADUs, especially in San Francisco, are starting to make a lot more sense.
Okay.
But Shilo, we focus specifically in detached.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I got a couple of questions. Is your design based on templates, or are they customized when you do the feasibility study?
Did you say templates?
Templates. Yeah.
Yes. So Shilo, because we have a panelized system, we do have preset designs, which will obviously be faster and easier to work with if you're looking to have a tenant in as soon as possible. But we can customize your design in about 100 square foot arrangements based on our panels. And we can obviously match your existing floor plan or your existing structure. Let's say you have hardy board or stucco panels, we can easily make it look just like your home. And we have craftsman versions, we have more Mediterranean as well as standard, as you see here.
Okay, the follow-up question is, do you guys have some sort of warranty on the workmanship or?
Yeah, so we can guarantee a 1-year warranty on the build side. that's only if you work fully with Shilo as a vertically integrated firm. We do allow you to work with a general contractor if you'd like us to ship you our parts, but then we can't guarantee the build warranty, of course. And each of our materials, whether it be hardy board or our interior sidings, they come with their own manufacturer warranties as well.
So some of the other components could have like a longer year warranty, like specifically the wall panel or specifically the roof. And then you could also purchase for an additional fee a 3 to 5 year warranty on the whole construction. So it's the 1 year, 3 to 5 year optional if you pay for it, and then different components have longer, maybe 10 to 15.
Any other questions?
Is California the leading state at this point with ADUs?
Actually, no. So California is following a model that's been demonstrated by Canada and Portland, Oregon, as well as Seattle. So I believe it was in Vancouver, 1/3 of all homes, single-family homes, have some sort of accessory dwelling unit. California is nowhere near that, but they're following a model that they've seen has benefited other jurisdictions with their housing crises, and it's something that we're both California and Shilo is betting big on. Yes, sir.
You guys talked about earlier that there's possible future regulation on having to rent out ADUs to affordable housing unit tenants. Do you guys have some like projected numbers on what it would look like when you're renting to affordable housing tenant?
So that depends because each city has its own what they deem affordable. But are you speaking about a specific city?
For example, let's say San Jose, or like how would the cap rate vary? You know, on average.
So in San Jose, I can't guarantee, but I do know that if cities require affordable housing, they're going to have some sort of benefit that's going to make the cash flow hopefully make sense, whether it be reduced permitting fees or as built permit, or easily allow you to convert an accessory dwelling.
Yeah, in the Bay Area, the specific group that I know is working on creating better loans if you do go with affordable housing is the Housing Trust of Silicon Valley. I think you have to sit through one of their like 4-hour workshops, but at the end of it, and if you kind of check off all the boxes, then you could get a loan whose terms are better compared to maybe a traditional loan. So again, that's the Housing Trust of Silicon Valley. They also have some phenomenal resources on affordable housing and accessory dwelling units.
Yes, sir.
Are all your main designs flat roof?
So we do have some pitched roof designs as well, and we also have mono-pitched. We can show you some of the things that we worked on. Our architect has built a mono-pitched roof ADU in Walnut Creek before that I'd be happy to show you afterwards.
What is the flat roof material made of?
So the flat roof, we can use any type of material on the top, but we're using structural insulated panels for the interior structure.
And I understand these price per square foot. Is that just the building, and then extras would be if there was a driveway that had to be built or a patio?
Yeah, we don't technically include landscaping, but that is a feature that we can contract out if you'd like.
I'm sorry. I'm
Sure.
not very the definition of a tiny house I've heard of.
Sure.
Is just apples and oranges.
Yeah, definitely apples to orange. I'd like to make a distinction. So we aren't tiny homes. Tiny homes are, on wheels and portable and don't appreciate as part of your home. What accessory dwelling units are and what Shilo only builds are accessory dwelling units, which are permanent structures that add to the value of your home and are attached to your single family lot.
So do you pull all the permits?
Yes, we do.
Since they're all electric, you guys never go looking to get a second panel on that unit. It's all off the main home.
So that depends, and that's something that we outline in the site survey because a contractor might say, hey, you're good to go, but then find out that you need a couple extra amps and you need a new actual electrical panel.
an actual PG&E where it...
Yes, you can connect to the existing line if you have enough power. Yes, ma'am.
I understand solar is going to be required after January 1st.
Yes, it is. So that's something we're looking into heavily because accessory dwelling units, depending on the size, might be exempt from that because the roof or where the ADU is being built might not necessarily make sense or be feasible. But yes, for new single-family home construction, solar panels are going to be required starting 2020.
It's single family, but there's nothing specific about ADUs requiring solar?
No, but ADUs as of right now fit into the single-family jurisdiction and zoning laws.
Kind of gray area.
So I would like to say all cities, especially in the Bay Area, I've been to, I'd like to say 5 different building departments in the last 5 days, meeting and making sure that our laws and we're in line with what these cities are going to require. And yes, they are all working very hard. They know the new laws and they're trying to draft up legislation. They have planners dedicated to this.
Wow.
But if you're working in the Bay Area, that shows that it's obviously a very important thing to them. So if you're working in the Bay Area, I'd love to talk to you about some of the extra laws that are coming up.
Little thing about like the energy, the better insulated your walls, the less electricity you're going to use, because usually it's like AC or heating that's killing the electricity. So the better insulation you have on your wall. So it may be a little bit pricier up front to have better insulation for your panels, but on the back end it's going to be a lot nicer and less expensive.
Wow.
Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Is a residential fire sprinkler system needed?
So in San Jose, that's only if you already have fire sprinklers in your existing home. Do you have existing? Yes, then it will be required for your ADU.
I wanted for you to explain the helical piers a little bit. And so the ADUs are sitting above grade. They're not flat on the ground on those piers. Is that correct?
Yes, so that's because we allow for a crawl space, which makes it easier for maintenance. You know, if you have a concrete slab, it's very difficult to access some of your utility lines if you do need to maintain them at all. What's easier about that is it's usually a much faster installation with helical piers, and in that, you save money and time. And basically, you can imagine them as giant screws. So depending on the structural load of your existing ADU that we're trying to build, it'll dictate how many helical piers you need. But typically the cost ends up being similar or cheaper to a concrete slab foundation.
So what are the helical piers made of and how long do they last?
I believe it's galvanized steel. I'm not sure what the warranty is. That depends on the manufacturer, but I will double check and get back to you on that.
Seismically, helical piers are tested and proven. In fact, in San Francisco, they're being forced to retrofit a lot of foundations with helical piers because they actually turn out to be longer lasting than a concrete slab in case of a cracking. So in regards to the longevity, I would say I'm confident helical piers end up kind of doing the job better than concrete.
And you can adjust it later.
Yeah, yes. You can adjust it later.
How can someone partner with you when they are looking to make a new purchase? A new single-family home purchase in January, February of next year, just in the evaluation process of a new property. What are some ways that?
Sure. So I mean, the easiest way to go is start with buildshilo.com. You just schedule a call with us, tell us about your project. We are open to taking on single-family home projects. We've done it before, and we've built every type of real estate development.
Right.
So I would say that's the best place to start, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it afterwards.
Are you talking about you want to find a single family home and then you're thinking which one has the space for an ADU?
Exactly.
Would be good
Exactly.
Oh,
so
see.
I'm just having a consultative approach.
Yeah, we can help consult you with that, and then again, I'm not sure if we're allowed to do site surveys for properties that aren't owned, but we can try. Yeah, we can try our very best to do as much online certainty, and then you can go from there.
But if you're looking for a single-family home right now for an ADU investment, I would always recommend a flat lot and a large backyard space. That's a really good way to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Last question.
Do you have any data about appraisal value? Let's say an area be $1,000 per square feet, where at the ADU, do you know what?
So that's very difficult because typically with real estate investments, what you look at are comps or comparables, but there aren't a lot of properties with ADUs being sold. But if you think just intuitively, if an ADU is being sold or rented out at $2,000 a month, you can use the income approach to understand at least what you're valuing it at. And in Portland, Oregon, where the ADU movement, I'd like to say, really picked up, we saw where ADUs were being built, but not necessarily it was coming in at cost. But as homeowners start to understand the value of it as a rental investment property, those values have shot up much higher than cost. So I'll be happy to show you some case studies afterwards. Okay, well, thank you all so much for the great questions. And yeah, if you have any more, please feel free to